Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, or welcome if you are new to my channel. Another 1980 horror movie, of course, today that we're going to take a look at, and this is a slasher from 1980. Another movie I've never seen before, and that movie is from my standard DVD collection. He Knows You're Alone. I don't know how well you guys can see that there. The lighting is a little funky once again, but every girl is frightened the night before her wedding, but this time there's good reason. So yeah, he knows you're alone. Um, Probably most notably for the fact that this is Tom Hanks' feature film debut, and he's not in the film very long, but still, it's noteworthy. So let's just go ahead and get into He Knows You're Alone. So He Knows You're Alone is a 1980 American psychological slasher film directed by Armand Mastriani, written by Scott Parker. The plot follows a woman who is stalked by a killer targeting soon to be brides the weekend before her wedding. So He Knows You're Alone has been credited for being one of the first horror films inspired by the success of Halloween and shares a number of similarities with that previous hit. Yes, it does, and we'll get into that. A young bride is murdered on her wedding day by the man she rejected for her current fiance, Len Gamble, a detective. Several years later on Long Island, a young bride to be named Marie is stabbed to death in a movie theater while her friend Ruthie sits beside her. The killer, Ray Carlton, disappears into the night. The next morning, Ray arrives on Staten Island where he observes university student Amy Jensen from a distance. Amy is preparing for her wedding. She, her fiance Phil, and his friends on their way out of town prepare for a bachelor party before the wedding. After attending a ballet class with her friends, Nancy and Joyce, all three run into their philosophy professor Carl, with whom Joyce is having an affair. Amy leaves to go to the dress fitting, stopping to get ice cream on her way. There she notices a man following her. Outside the ice cream shop, she's startled by Marvin, her ex-boyfriend, who is on a break from his job at the local morgue. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast, or the setup and the premise for He Knows You're Alone. As far as the cast goes, we have Elizabeth Kemp as Nancy, or I'm sorry, um, we have Caitlin O'Haney. We have Caitlin O'Haney as Amy Jensen, Don Scardino as Marvin Travis, Elizabeth Kemp, rest in peace, as Nancy, Tom Rolfing as Ray Carlton, Lewis Arlett as Detective Len Gamble, Patsy Peace as Joyce, James Rebhorn as Professor Carl Mason, Dana Barron as Diane Jensen, Tom Hanks as Elliot in his film debut, and Paul Gleason as Detective Frank Daly. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for He Knows You're Alone from 1980. Obviously, there's a lot of familiar names in there. Um, Besides Tom Hanks, you have James Rebhorn and Paul Gleason, along with Dana Barron, who we'll get into with my pros here. But He Knows You're Alone from 1980. You kind of have to know what kind of movie this is going into it. This isn't a Friday the 13th slasher. So if you're looking for kills on screen and blood and gore, then you're going to be disappointed in this movie. This really is the Halloween 1978, the poor man's Halloween 1978, I would say. Very much in the same vein in terms of um, being more stalkerish, more visual, and less kills, less blood, less gore, that kind of thing. So I think as long as you know that going into it, you can have a relatively good time with this movie yet. But if you're going into it expecting Friday the 13th or The Burning, those type of slasher movies, you're going to be disappointed. So let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the things that I liked about He Knows You're Alone. Um, I think the premise and the story is very interesting in this movie. I haven't really seen this type of motivation used by a killer before in a slasher movie in terms of, sort of a jilted lover being left at the altar, somebody being left, and then as the bride to be's preparing to get married, they're stalked by this person. Um, I enjoyed that aspect of it. I think it works pretty well for a killer's motivation in a slasher film to take revenge on all brides to be. Um, I just thought that that was very interesting and something different than just the typical, you embarrassed me, or you did damage to me inadvertently, and now I'm getting my revenge on you kind of thing. Which this movie kind of is that too, getting revenge on you, but the whole bride to be aspect and the wedding day aspect is different. And I thought that was fairly enjoyable. Obviously, as I said, it's the feature debut movie for a very young Tom Hanks. And even though he's not in the movie all that much, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, if that, on screen, it's more of a cameo, frankly. It was fun to see him before he became a huge star like he is today. Also, Dana Barron. This was also her film debut. And for those of you who don't know who that is, she, of course, was Audrey Griswold in the first National Lampoon's Vacation movie, the one where they go to Wally World. She was also in 90210 and was involved in some other projects throughout the years. But yeah, I recognized her right away as Audrey, mostly Audrey Griswold. So that was fun to see. The movie has other familiar faces as well, like James Rebhorn, most notably from, well, he was in a lot of movies. Rest in peace to him too. He passed away about 10 years ago, but he was in, probably most notably, the one I always think of is Meet the Parents, as he was um, what was he, like the uncle, I think, in that movie. But he's been in a lot of movies. He was in The Game with Michael Douglas. He was in a lot of Law and Order episodes as far as guest stars, a lot of TV and film, kind of a character actor. Paul Gleason as well, as Detective Frank Daly, even though he's not in the movie a whole lot either. Definitely some familiar faces, and some faces before they were big stars in this movie. That was very interesting and adds a certain charm, I think, to the movie. Um, there is some fun, really good stalkerish kind of moments and scenes throughout the movie. More so in the second half, I would say. Um, the two scenes that really stand out to me in that regard are, one, there's like a haunted house, not roller coaster, but one of those haunted house cart rides where you get into a cart and then it drives you through the back, basically a semi trailer that's got all kinds of ghosts and creatures that jump out at you. um if you've been on one of those, but that was a good scene from a visual standpoint, because there's like flashing lights in there, and we end up seeing the stalker character in there. So that was a good scene. And then also there's a scene towards the end where our main character of Amy is trying to drive away. Um, is trying to drive away, and the killer ends up being on the top of the car. We get some really nice visuals and stalker moments there too. Really creepy visuals. I thought it was very effectively done, particularly in those two scenes. But there's some other scenes as well, like at the ice cream shop, and really throughout the movie. Like I said, the first half of the movie is more just like the stalker in the background, and then the second half of the movie is a lot more direct, between the kills and actual um, stalking, like getting close and confronting our main character. So that was all very well done, I thought. Finally, the score, while not being overly original or complete standout, it's effective with a very suspenseful and thrilling kind of score that I think adds to the suspenseful and tension-filled moments in the movie. So, and then I also, as a final sort of pro, I did sort of enjoy the ending full circle twist that we get, the very last scene of this movie, which is a takeoff, of course, and a continuation full circle from the beginning of this movie, kind of how it all gets started. So I thought that was well set up and well done too. So yeah, those are my pros, or the things that I like the most about He Knows You're Alone from 1980. As far as the cons go, as I said, this is basically much in the vein of Halloween, of John Carpenter's 1980 movie Halloween, the original, and a lot less than the sequel Halloween 2 from 1981, which of course was a lot more in the vein of Friday the 13th. And even though this movie came out after the original Friday the 13th, it even said at the beginning of my review here, or my premise, where it says it was really inspired by the success of Halloween from 1978. It really is. And that's why you don't see a lot of blood or gore in this movie. Um, it's a lot more stalkerish, like babysitting stalkerish in that movie, and a lot more brides to be stalkerish in this movie. It's not about the kills or the gore, so you just kind of have to know that going in. Because the kills are mostly off screen and aren't bloody or gory at all. It is more of a psychological stalker kind of movie, just like the original Halloween was. Now, don't before you comment your anger, don't get me wrong, this isn't on the same level as John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. All I'm saying is it very much takes from that movie. It doesn't do it nearly as well. um but in terms of focusing more on the stalking and less on the kills and the gore, that's more of what I'm getting into here when I say that it's more in the vein. I'm not saying it's the same level as Halloween from 1970, because it certainly isn't. It is a slower pace type of movie, especially the first half where they're setting up characters and character motivations to make things work later on. So just kind of know that going in, but there's not a lot of kills or action in the first 30 to 40 minutes, which is kind of par for the course for a lot of these slasher movies, especially from the year 1980. The whole detective storyline I could have done without, frankly. It really doesn't add any value. And the detective of who's played by Lewis Al- Lewis Arlett, Detective Len Gamble. He dies pretty easily once he finally confronts the killer. It's all about, oh, I got my second chance and all this. And then within a matter of a minute, he gets stabbed in the heart, basically. So it's kind of like, well, that was kind of pointless. Um, so yeah, that didn't really do anything for me. Um, a lot of the characters, of course, just like a lot of slasher movies, are just there to be killed. Like we're introduced to James Rebhorn's character, Professor Carl Mason, who happens to be having an affair with one of his students. That really didn't. They were both just bodies, basically. There's nothing more to it than that. There were two people having an affair that end up being kills, frankly. Um, and interestingly enough, Tom Hanks' character of Elliot, he was supposed to be killed, but because it's Tom Hanks and he's such a nice guy and he has that reputation, the filmmakers decided not to kill him. So that's so Tom Hanks, but I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit. Um, a lot of the characters though are there just to be killed. And then my final con is, if the killer is all about killing young brides to be, then how come he's killing other people in this movie? Like Amy's friends, who's the bride to be for most of this movie, like Nancy and Joyce and Professor Carl Mason. That's a little bit of a. I don't know if it's just a case where he kills anybody that's close to that bride to be, but that kind of goes against the tagline and the premise of the movie. He's not just killing brides to be, he's killing those around the brides to be too. So I thought that was kind of interesting and not in a good way. Because it's not really explained, but I guess that's the best interpretation you could make for that. But yeah, those are kind of my cons for He Knows You're Alone from 1980. Um, this is kind of a hard movie because, on one hand, it's not a great slasher movie. I think it's a better psychological stalker movie. And if you watch it in that vein, I think you'll enjoy it well enough because of some of the names and faces in the movie. I thought the acting was serviceable here. I thought that Caitlin O'Heaney as Amy Jensen does a good job. Don Scardino as Marvin Travis is fine as the ex, who ends up becoming the future husband, or so we think. We don't know if that actually ever comes to fruition or not. But I thought the acting was fine. Like I said, familiar faces, a pretty good score. I think you just have to go into this movie with the right mindset of knowing what it is. That it's not a killer, it's not a slasher movie in terms of the kills and the gore. On that level, it's about a 3 out of 10. On a stalkerish, psychological level, a psychological slasher level, it's about a 7.5 out of 10. Overall, I think I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. I think it's pretty good. I'm glad to have it in my collection, though I don't necessarily think I need to rush out and get and get I don't even know if it exists on Blu-ray or not, but get a higher standard or higher quality version, or if one exists, of He Knows You're Alone. The DVD is fine, but I am glad to have it in my collection as a 1980s slasher movie, even though it's not when you think of slasher movie, it's not the kind of slasher movie you think of. More of a psychological um horror movie, I would say. But 7 out of 10 for He Knows You're Alone. I know I was kind of all over the place with this review. It's because this is kind of a hard movie to review, frankly. But go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen He Knows You're Alone from 1980. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Why or why not? Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this first part of my 1980s horror movie series. And you don't want to miss any of my other great horror content that I have coming out starting in August and throughout the rest of 2024. So, with that being said, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're enjoying this review series. And as always, stay scared. Bye.